The backrooms. There are places that feel like they shouldn't exist. Not because they're strange, but because they're too familiar. An empty hallway, a silent office, a place you've never been, but somehow recognize. And sometimes, those places feel a little too real. The Backrooms didn't begin as a story. They began with a single post in May of 2019 on an anonymous forum known as 4chan. Someone created a thread asking for images that feel off. One user replied with a photograph: yellow walls, old carpet, fluorescent lights. Nothing remarkable on the surface, and yet something about it felt wrong. Then, beneath that image, a paragraph appeared. If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old, moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. That was it. No book, no movie, no official creator. Just one image and one paragraph. But it introduced something powerful, something people immediately understood. The idea of no-clipping came from video games, a glitch where you pass through walls and fall outside the map. But in the backrooms, you don't fall into nothing. You fall into something else. Endless yellow rooms, the smell of damp carpet, fluorescent lights buzzing endlessly, no windows, no exits. And the most unsettling part? It isn't alien. It's familiar. The original post never described what was there, only that something existed. Something that could hear you long before you ever saw it. And that single line, because it sure as hell has heard you, is what made it terrifying. After that post, people didn't just read it, they built on it. Across platforms like Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, and Wikidot, the backrooms began to grow. Not as one story, but as a shared idea. There was no single author, no official version, just fragments that expanded into something larger. Over time, those fragments became organized. People began describing levels. The first was level 0, the place most people enter. Endless yellow rooms, infinite and maze-like, with no consistent layout. You can walk for hours and never escape, sometimes even ending up back where you started. Then came level 1, where the environment shifts into something more industrial. Warehouses, concrete floors, pipes running overhead, puddles collecting on the ground. It feels more real, but also less safe. The lights are dimmer, the air feels heavier, and for the first time, you begin to feel like you're not alone. Beyond that, structure begins to collapse entirely. Level 2 and beyond introduce tunnels, offices, malls, and even houses, all layered together in ways that shouldn't make sense. Places that don't connect, but somehow do. And the deeper you go, the less reality behaves the way it should. In the beginning, the backrooms were empty. That was the fear, the uncertainty, the not knowing. But over time, people gave that fear a form. They began naming things: hounds, smilers, shadow figures, mimics, creatures that watch, follow, and sometimes imitate. But these were not part of the original idea. At its core, the backrooms were never about what you could see. They were about what you couldn't. Then, in 2022, everything changed again. A creator known as Kane Pixels released a series called The Backrooms, Found Footage. Through realistic camera movement, distorted audio, and a grounded visual style, the Backrooms began to feel real in a way they never had before. The series introduced new ideas, corporate experiments, dimensional breaches, and the possibility that the Backrooms were not discovered, but created. What was once a simple concept became something much larger, something closer to a full sci-fi horror world. And that's where the theories begin. Some believe the Backrooms feel real because they tap into memory, places your brain recognizes, schools, offices, malls, but stripped of life. And when those familiar places are empty, your mind doesn't understand it. It fills the silence with fear. Others believe the Backrooms exist alongside our reality, like a parallel dimension, a copy of the world, but unfinished. And sometimes, without warning, you slip into it. There are theories that suggest something far more intentional, that the Backrooms were created through experimentation, attempts to manipulate space or reality itself, opening something that was never meant to be accessed, trapping people in the process. Some believe the Backrooms aren't physical at all, but psychological, a place within the mind, something you don't enter with your body, but fall into mentally, like a descent rather than a journey. And then there is the darkest possibility, that the Backrooms are not empty, that they were never empty, that they are observation spaces, holding areas, places where something watches, that you are not lost, you are being watched. The Backrooms became popular because they tap into something universal: nostalgia, isolation, the fear of being alone in a place that should be full of life, endless space with no escape, familiarity twisted just enough to feel wrong. And that's the part most people miss. The Backrooms are not about monsters. They are about being somewhere that shouldn't exist, but does. They didn't start as a story. They started as a feeling. And the worst part is, you've probably felt it before. That moment when a place feels familiar, but you know, you've never been there. Now here's the thing. Everyone says there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing is ever truly created out of thin air. So what if these places aren't imagined at all? There are people who describe locations that feel real, but not real at the same time. The corridors of our minds, the darkened hallways in our reality. Whatever they are, they feel familiar, like we've been there before. We just don't remember. And maybe that's why they feel so real. Some people talk about places they've seen in dreams, walking on water, with clouds above reflecting beneath their feet, a distant light somewhere on the horizon, like the ocean and the sky become a hallway, stretching endlessly forward. Others describe worlds where nothing makes sense, stairs that turn upside down, doors floating in open space, escalators that lead nowhere, ropes hanging in midair, reaching up into the clouds. Strange places, impossible places. And yet, there's something about them that feels remembered, like we've all been there. And if you think you haven't, maybe you just don't remember. Or maybe it's just fantasy. But before this ends, let me leave you with this. Thought can create tulpas. What is a tulpa, you may ask? The term comes from Tibetan Buddhist tradition. It originally referred to a manifested thought form, something brought into existence through intense focus and meditation. So to be clear, a tulpa is a presence created by the mind, formed through concentration, visualization, and belief. Experienced by some as having its own personality, its own voice, even a sense of autonomy. So then, maybe the backrooms aren't just a concept, but a kind of constructed reality, similar to a tulpa. Not a physical place in the traditional sense, but something shaped into existence through belief, focus, and collective imagination. Then maybe the backrooms aren't just a concept. Some of us have experienced places in waking life that felt off. Empty highways, vacant alleys, the deafening silence of a forest, and strange moments in solitude. So, if enough people have experienced the empty spaces, who's to say they didn't help create the backrooms? Kane Pixel's question posted on 4chan may have been the backroom door opening up for the rest of humanity to experience.